3 times in the past. I've done this talk about 1,000 times, decent amount of times. Oh, I see Mr. Lindeen has joined us. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for having me. Thank you to Judy Nadell, I believe I'm pronouncing that right, who was really helpful and instrumental and been texting and emailing, and she's really been wonderful. So we're going to get started shortly. In terms of just more of a little bit of my background with before we start in about 60 seconds is I've also been lucky enough to be on ABC, Fox, News 12, all the different News 12s, and then I do a regular spot on WFAN on the recruiting process, which is on Rick Wolf's show Sunday morning. But we're certainly going to cover here a lot more than we would cover on that show where you have commercials and callers and that type of thing. That is something I'm going to get started after just reading everything that people have typed in here. People have put in what year in school they are, or their son or daughter, what sport or sports they play. Then obviously we're going to talk about the effect of COVID-19 on college programs and on the recruiting process. And there'll be a fair amount that is not answerable on this call, but I'll kind of towards the end give you one side or the other of some of the rulings that are going to come out likely next month. So, all right, so I'm going to start now. And again, thank you to Mr. Lindeen. Thank you to Ms. Nadell for having me. Again, I've been to Greenwich several times. I want to say 3 times, first time on a webinar. And you are all muted. I can't see you. I can't hear you. You can only type in the chat. And that's the way that makes this protected so we don't have stupidity. I'll just leave it at that. That I know hopefully has not happened at Greenwich, but has happened at many schools, including my own kids' school. So I'm going to go to a screen share mode now. And okay, so hopefully you all see my screen. I just want to make sure my controls are still good where I can see any comments on the side. Okay, and then I'm going to put this also into slideshow play mode here. Okay, so hopefully your full screen is the first of my slides. Now, just for some housekeeping things, questions will be answered. Feel free to type into the chat area as I'm going. It might be something I didn't explain right. I'll glance at it. I may not stop and give the answer at that point if I don't think it's worth it at that stage. I'll definitely hang around towards the end of this and do some questions that are answered, that you send in individually, but that I'll answer to the group. You can also feel free to reach out to me in any way you want. I'll give you my email towards the end. I'll just let you know now. You can see on the top of the screen I have a website, and my email address is really easy. It's wayne@mazzoni.com. So if you want to ask a question, today, by email, tonight, in a week, 2 weeks, I get questions all the time. So I'm happy to be able to do that, and sort of something I provide since the school has been, kind enough to hire me for this talk. So I always do this as my first slide. And this is also a good time to say that the recruiting process is really 3 major pieces. And still is, regardless of the coronavirus. Step number 1 is, from your perspective, out of all the colleges in the United States, what are the ones that are fit for me academically, athletically, and then socially for my preferences? That's step 1 of the process, which we'll get to after this slide. I'm going to explain this slide in a second. Step number 2 is, all right, I've done my homework, done my research. These are the schools that are a fit. How do I get those coaches to know who I am, to know about me as an athlete, as a student, and as a person? And that's step 2. And then step 3 is, what do I do when either I'm not getting recruited or I am getting recruited from these schools? And what do I do to reposition myself? Or if I am being recruited, what are the factors that one has from getting that first interest ultimately to committing to that school? But I always kind of start off with this, or I should say I put this in maybe about 5 years ago, because this is the question I get asked at dinner parties or when we used to be able to be socially together. And I would say, someone says, you're a coach, or he's a recruiting expert, et cetera. And the question I get is, what are you looking for? what is a college coach looking for in a student athlete? And you'll see at the top of the slide, it says about 7%. We have a lot of different sports. Greenwich is a great athletic program, has a lot of different sports. But the overall average is that 7% of high school athletes move on to play college, Division 1, 2, 3, community college, junior college. So this is my view of what you need to be and have to be in this 7%. Number one is you need to be a talented, motivated athlete with the physical traits for your sport, whether it's height, speed, skill. You need to be really, really good. And I went on my morning run today, and I was thinking that a lot of how much you love and how motivated you are has probably been answered in this last month. If you've kept your motivation, if you've kept your workout routine, no matter what, if you have the best home gym or you got nothing, there's a way to improve skill and strength and all those types of things. So if you are still motivated and have been self-motivating over this past month, you're going to be a college athlete. If you've now taken this month as a vacation and slept in and stayed up late, eaten like crap and not done anything, it's not going to work at the next level, because the next level is the place where people are self-motivated. And if you're not, you just don't last. So to be in the 7%, it helps to have those characteristics. Number two, you have to be a serious student. Obviously, you need to have grades that match up to the schools that you're looking at. But more importantly is when we're recruiting, and it's the reason most of us coach college over high school, because if we didn't, all of us at the college level, if we didn't do this, we'd be a high school teacher and coach, right? In a lot of ways, it's a better avenue. We could get into that on its own webinar. But we get to pick the team in college. We don't just get tryouts and make our team. We get to recruit and pick who we want on the team. And if you have 10 goalies and you only need one, but you're recruiting 10, and you find out 3 aren't really serious students and they blow off their work or they don't get a good review from a guidance counselor, whatever the case is, you just cross them off the list. So you need to be serious about your schoolwork, because no one wants to recruit a headache. Now, that might be different in major college football or basketball, where there's ticket sales and television contracts and $1 million salaries. But that's not the case for 99% of the world that's out there. We want to recruit serious students that want to be in college to get an education. Number 3, you need to have an understanding of the recruiting process. And I'm just wondering, and I'm hoping right now as I'm sharing my screen, I'm freaking out that you could see the chat. I'm assuming you can't, that I could see the chat. So if I need to get the chat off so you don't see it, let me know. If not, I'll just keep going. So you need to have an understanding of the recruiting process. Most people know just enough from Google and 3 other parents that they're in danger to themselves with the recruiting process. Unless you know a former coach that's lived it, obviously a lot of your high school coaches played and have a good insight, but I think only a college coach can really understand the recruiting process, or maybe athletes that have been through it. So if you have an older brother or friend that went through the recruiting process, they're much more informed, but there's a lot of misinformation. And then the last piece is, get back to that right here, is you need to have a plan in place. As just I spoke about before, and I don't think I need to hash it again, is, what are you doing academically now that you're learning from home? What are you doing nutritionally, sleep-wise, strength training-wise? What is you don't have to be crazy goal-oriented, but you need to have a kind of a routine in place to reach excellence, because that's kind of what happens in college athletics. I'm assuming you don't want to get to college and ride the bench or be 4th string at something. And we don't want you to be that either. We want you to come in and make an impact in the program. And the ones that do that figure out how to have their own structure and their own thing. So that's where we start off with. That's what you should be aiming towards, to be in that 7%. Okay, moving along. Here's where we start part number 1. And part number 1, again, is how do you narrow your list down of schools that make a fit for you. You see up here, if you're following along, I'm just going to answer one question right here that I just popped in. How much difference is there with grades between recruiting Division 1 and Division 3? Very little different with the grades. And we'll actually get to that a little bit. Most schools that we're looking at, the academics in terms of what they're looking for, are very, very similar in terms of, if you want to take Notre Dame and Williams, they're going to treat the academic piece extremely similar. Now, some schools will have different standards, obviously based on what they're looking for their typical student. But whether it's D1 or D3 will only really matter in terms of what the core GPA needs to be for the clearinghouse, which is in about 5 slides. So back to this. I put up there, it says the broken leg scenario. And I don't need to lecture you fully on the college search process. You have family that can help. You have a great guidance department that can help. But I am here to tell you that if you pick a college just for the athletic piece, you're going the wrong route, because you're the customer. There's about 3,000 colleges with athletics. You should be able to find one that is a perfect fit for you in every single way. And it's about 45% of college freshmen at all levels that play 4 years of college sports. So to say, you know what, I don't want to go to Marist. By the way, Marist is a great school. I don't want to go to Marist, not really what I'm looking for. They don't have my major. And you go there just because the soccer coach likes you, and that coach leaves or something else happens. You get hurt, you get injured, academic issues, you get out recruited, you're not having any fun. There's a million different reasons why athletes stop playing the sport. But if now the sport isn't working out and you look around and you go, you know, what am I doing at Marist? You've mismanaged the whole college search and recruiting process. So you want to start narrowing down your list, not factoring in athletics at all in the beginning, in the very beginning. So if you're a 10th grader, you know, or at any age for that matter, you should just be starting to look at what kind of schools you'd be happy at regardless. And some of those factors are how far from home, what, you know, is the setting of the campus? Is it city, suburbs? Is it rural? What's the size of the campus? What size do you like? What do you want to major in if you know what you want to major? How about the cost of the school and their financial aid? There's a lot of different factors. And I'm not going to do this through the poll, although I could call up a little poll, and because I've done this 1,000 times, I know the audience really well. Is how many schools have you visited? You as the athlete, how many schools have you been to? I'm guessing your average 10th grader on the other side of the screen here has been to either no schools, one school, two schools, or they went with an older brother, or they went for a tournament. They really didn't look at that school as a potential for them. So obviously colleges, campuses are closed right now. Some you may be able to drive around, but it may be closed. So you may not have an opportunity of what I'm about to say right now, because I'll put that up on the screen here, is you're starting to try to get information as much as possible. Yeah, you can read books about the college process. You can go to websites. You can go to Naviance. You can go to College Board. You can talk to the guidance department. You can get an independent counselor. Nothing beats going to visit colleges. Nothing beats. The world is back to normal. You're going to June, you're playing a field hockey tournament up in the Boston area. You should definitely get on the campus of 6 or 7 schools over that weekend. You're not meeting admissions. You're not meeting a coach. You're literally seeing the place, okay? Whether it's Boston College or Northeastern or BU or UMass or Bates. Excuse me, Bates is further up there. I was thinking Babson, which is a great school, or Stonehill or Bentley. There's so many schools. And just to look around and go, wow, you know, Northeastern, man, it sounded great. I love their brochures they sent me, but man, this is smack dab in the middle of the city. I don't like a city. Fine. You don't like a city. That's great feedback. That helps you shrink your list. If you get to a Northeastern and go, oh my God, I got to go to school in a city, that also shrinks your list. You want a huge school. Great. There's no right or wrong answers. You're going to college, not your mom, not your dad. You are going to college. And the more you learn of what you like, the better off you'll be. Same way for the job search for parents, right? Eventually you started to figure out what you like, and that's, you conduct a job search. But the first step is what you like. Before we go getting coaches interested in us and these other things that we're going to talk about, you should really know that you like that school. Okay, so I'm just encouraging you, when life is back to normal, to get on some college campuses, not meeting anybody, because ultimately you should go to schools 3 times. Not every school 3 times, but here's like this. 1, a 20-minute drive around campus, don't talk to a human, unless you want to just go into the bookstore and talk to somebody at checkout or whatever. You're not meeting a coach, you're not meeting admissions. If that school makes your smaller list, you now go meet the coach and you go do admissions touring. It starts to really be a viable school for you. And then if it's down to your 2 or 3 and you're really trying to make a final decision, you might go back for that overnight or that extended visit. But at first, you don't need to schedule a whole day at Babson, and then you drive up to the school and realize it only has 2,300 students and it's in the middle of the woods and it's the last place you want to go to school, and now you've blocked out a whole entire day. Okay, so that's really important. I want you to understand that I don't think you should be scheduling visits immediately. You should just be going to see schools. Okay, all right, getting off that slide right there. So the second slide on this first part of this talk is, how good are you at your sport? We're trying to narrow down your list of schools. And let me go back 1 second. Ultimately, when you are really ready, if you came to me and said, Coach, can you help me with the recruiting process? I'm going to say, do you have a list yet? If you don't really have a list of 10, 15, 20 schools, and that list can change. If you say Mid-Atlantic, I want 5,000 to 15,000 students. I want to study chemistry, and I have a 3-2 and a 1,100 math and verbal on my SAT. Boom, here's a set of schools. That could completely change. But that's the place you should really be before you're sort of ready to jump into the part we're about to get to here. And that is, how good are you at your sport? Are you a high-level scholarship, play on TV, D1 athlete? Are you a lower level D1 athlete? Are you a D2, D3? Or like most, 93% of high school athletes are not good enough to play in college. Maybe you fit into that group. So you need to get a realistic set of feedback from a variety of people to know what is the right level for you and how good are you at this thing. And you can see up here in the green, it says, not just what your parents think. I went to Gettysburg College, loved it, played football and baseball. D3 was the right level for me. Started out way over my head, and then I got good. Took a long time. And my dad, I'm 50 years old now. My dad, I talked to him earlier this week. He's like, oh, I heard you got the Greenwich webinar coming up yet. He goes, you got totally screwed. You should have went to Notre Dame on a full ride for both sports. My dad, blinders on, because he loved me, thought I was that good. The problem is, not just because my dad loved me and your parents love you, is that they see you in your own little world, right? Greenwich football, man, you guys have got tremendous football and probably churning out some D1 players for sure. But don't take this the wrong way. Greenwich football players, Greenwich, administrators, coaches. My guess is if Greenwich High School went to play the biggest teams in Florida, Texas, and California, I think you'd get thumped. I'm not positive, but I'm thinking you get thumped. Like in Texas, you're born the size of a lineman. They just have a lot of football players to get. It doesn't mean the best players in Greenwich can't be the really good Division I players. You know that from your history. However, I think your average guy on a football team at Texas is probably going to be better than your average guy on the football team in Connecticut. I think that would be fair to say. Now, so you just don't have that recruiting pool. If you want to take soccer, yeah, all right, you play your high school season, you're on your whatever outside football club that you play on, you're on your development team. Okay, soccer is a worldwide recruiting thing. You look at the rosters of most college programs, they have half a roster from outside the United States. So sometimes parents overjudge how good they think their kids are because they see them in a smaller pool. So what I'm offering you here is to think outside the box a little bit to try to get an idea of where you fit in. Number one, you should ask your high school travel lesson coaches. They should be your first line of defense. They're with you on a regular basis. They know you as a player and as a person. And I think you should have a conversation with them saying, Coach, I'm interested in playing lacrosse in college. What do you think is the right level for me? What do I need to work on? I saw someone put in there, Greenwich football would crush Alabama and Texas schools. That's good. All right, I like that. Hey, I hope so. You certainly have some talented players there, but I think we know that. And just maybe even every sport. Let's just take baseball. I'm a baseball guy. Is your average Connecticut high school baseball team as good as your average California baseball team? No, it would be the answer. Friends that are playing in college. So someone from your travel team or your high school that knows your talent level and they're now playing in college, text them, tweet them, have a conversation and say, my talent level. You're now playing mid-level Division I. How would I fit into that level? Great to get that feedback. And I do that all the time. When someone writes me and I have a kid on my team that knows that player, that's the first kid I go to. Hey, kid from your high school texted me or emailed me. So what do you think of the kid? I want that person's feedback, okay? Yes, we will get to swimming. So again, please keep this in mind. All this information is extremely general. I'm just throwing out those sports. You can even see individual sports, tennis, swim, golf, track. You should take everything that I say as very much a generic thing. There's a little bit of tweaking for some of these things. And again, that's where I can take some of your questions, towards the end. Camps and showcase events. All different sports have these. Everybody kind of gets to one pool. There you go, swimming person. One court, one field, and you've been to them probably already, or you're getting invites to go to these, and we'll see if the summer opens up for these events. But I'm not talking about getting recruited at these events. I'm talking about going to these events for two purposes. Number one, a lot of like the Penn State volleyball camp will do two things to help you know how good you are at volleyball as it pertains to college. One is a coach is going to be there with you for the 3-day camp and grade you. you'll actually get a report at the end of that saying what level they think is right from you from what they've seen. So you get coaches' feedback at that next level, which is crucial. Number two is you get a gut feeling of you're now at this camp where everyone there is really trying to be a college-bound student athlete, and you know how you stack up within that group of girls or guys at that volleyball camp. So my whole idea of you trying to figure this out early, and by the way, I should have said this already, my goal of doing these talks and writing my books and all that stuff is to take stress away from people. The world is plenty stressful enough. It's trying to de-stress you. I want you to have information so you know what to do to move things forward rather than just have conjecture that you've heard. But at the same time, the earlier you find out your talent level, the better, more time you have to do something about it. So back to our swimmer, if you take your 200 medley time and you realize that you're 15 seconds off of wanting to be able to swim at Colgate, you have time to do something. You have time to get to sleep and nutrition, or start getting on a swimming program that's better, or get different instruction, or get in the pool more, or do your dry lands, or whatever it might be that is going to help you get to that level. So senior year, you don't have much time to make that jump. I'd rather find out in 9th or 10th grade what I'm missing or what I need to work on so that I have a plan in place. Two other key pieces here is you got to watch colleges play. Again, there's no sports right now. This is the first time I've done a talk during the coronavirus thing. There's no sports to watch live, and I'm talking live. I'm not talking on TV. Everything looks easier on TV. Everyone looks not as fast and not as strong as intense. But if you want to play, softball, you should go watch D3 softball, D2 softball, D1 softball with your own eyes. Watch them practice or watch them play to gauge what you think, where you fit in. Because two things may happen. You may not realize until you go there that the Division III players are as good as they are. Conversely, you might have been overselling the Division I, going, I can't play there. And then you get there and realize, yeah, you could. However, the problem is most kids have this thing where here's the Greenwich High School level of athletics. Hopefully you can see me in some part of that screen. Division, they think, high school's here, Division III, Division II, and they think Division I is the only jump. The fact of the matter is that it's high school, and then the huge jump is to Division III. It's very competitive. Everyone was all league, everyone was captain, everyone was, team MVP at the Division III level. It is not a joke. And normally in a live event, I would say, is anyone in the audience, a parent or coach played the Division III, someone raises their hand, and I always say, was it a joke? Was it an optional practice, mismatched uniforms? And they say, no, it was crazy intense. And that's, the same way. Now, Division III is set up with practices and games the way it is, that it's going to be less of your overall college commitment than Division I or II. But it's still competitive from recruiting to making, playing on the team to everything that's involved with it. Now, those that are individual sport athletes, and I put golf, tennis, swim, track. Individual athletes definitely have an easier time figuring out how they stack up as it compares to college level, because you have an individual sport where in essence you're competing against yourself. So whatever your PGA handicap is, whatever your USTA ranking is, whatever your time is in swimming or golf or track, how far you throw a discus, that's what you are. Whereas you could say, I'm on the basketball team, I scored 24 points this winter. No one really cares. No one cares about your team sports stats, and no one goes to max preps and all those. That's not how we recruit. Okay, most coaches are not recruiting off stats. Individual sports is a different story, and you can also get recruited partially based off your times and results, but you also know how you stack up. So you should be able to quickly, more than any team sport player, start narrowing down your list, unless you think you're physically underdeveloped or you're going to blossom when you get to that elite college coach. You are what you are. You run the mile in 5.5 minutes, Division III, 5 minutes or so, Division II, 4.5 minutes, Division I, and you want to be at the top 10, track programs in the country, you better be a 4-minute miler or in that area. You can do it, whereas you can't really do that in the other sports. Okay, so there's people always ask me, I'll just quickly go through it. I kind of already touched on, I don't think I need to, is 168 hours in the week, and what are you doing, to improve during that time? And that's something I do with my college guys. They send me every Sunday night what their 168 hours a week looks like coming up. You know, it's they put fun in there and they put goofing around and sleeping and naps and video games and all that, but it's just a way to keep them structured to becoming, you know, people that can go out in the world and contribute. So ultimately, what you're trying to do when you do this, and this is not going to happen by the end of this webinar, but ultimately you're going to go, you know what, I'm talking to some people, I'm getting feedback, I went to a couple events, I'm probably a D2 player, probably a Division II player. Now you take that list of schools we talked about, I kind of hypothetically gave you a list of schools, and now, you know, from Mid-Atlantic to the enrollment size, to the major, to the grades, who's got Division II, let's go tennis, okay? Who's got lower level Division I tennis that I could potentially play at? Who's got the better Division III programs? And that becomes your list of schools. It may not be your final list, but you need some structure. You can't just say, I'm going to get recruited and the whole world of college coaches is going to come find me. This is probably a good time for me to tell you, recruiting is brutal from our side. It's a big country. There's a lot of teams, a lot of athletes. We have a limited number of coaches at each school, at each sport that are doing the recruiting. We have budget restrictions. We have we have millions of things going on at the same time. There's an event up in Boston. Well, there's one in Philadelphia. We can only be so many places at one time. Recruiting is really, really difficult. So if you're able to be proactive and narrow it down, it's going to help you so much, you know, further. And again, you could see on the screen, the ultimate place to be at is have 5 to 15 schools that are a good fit for you, that you love the campus. It fits, you know, for you. It's a good academic fit. And it's a good athletic fit, okay? So those 2 slides end kind of step 1 on what I think you should be doing to know where you stand and to, you know, feel like you know how you stack up for this next level. Because the reality is, I'm assuming most of you on this webinar aren't being recruited yet, okay? If you're being recruited, you probably could have slept in this beginning part and pick us up at part number 3. Most of you are good players, good enough to play in college, but you may not be the 6'10" basketball player, or you may not be all-state in swimming, or you may not be the top. You're good enough, but listen, if you're a 6'10" basketball player, you don't need this webinar. You really don't need this webinar, right? But if you're a really good player, loves it, motivated, does all the right things, has finesse, knows the sport, all those things, there's a lot of those. You have to know, a lot of kids like that. So you have to know on your side how to stand out from everybody else, okay? It's like a job opening, a bunch of resumes come in. Who are the 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 they're gonna get interviewed and move it forward? Okay, I'm gonna keep on rolling, assuming all the tech is good and all that. So I'm gonna actually ask you a question, have you guys start typing in for this one here. This is the only slide on step 2 of the recruiting process. And step 2 is you have a list, and you're trying to get the coaches at those schools to know you're a living, breathing student athlete at Greenwich High School, okay? And to be evaluated. Read up here pretty closely. If you get no further, if you get a no from a college coach, you've gotten way further than most ever get. So if you have Bucknell, Lehigh, Lafayette, Villanova, Colgate on your list, and you get those coaches to say, we don't need your position, we don't think you're good enough, you don't have the grades, etc. You've gotten way past what anyone or most people will ever get. Most people never have one meaningful conversation and just don't have, nothing sticks. They throw out a bunch of stuff, nothing sticks. There's not even one no. If you get a no, it means eventually you're going to get yourself a yes. You're actually having conversations, okay? So I'm going to ask this question to the chat here. There's only 3 things that a student athlete can do to get a college coach to know who they are and evaluate them. Not just know who they are, but evaluate them. What are those 3 things? Feel free to type in any one or all 3 things that you can think of that you can do to get the coach at Bucknell to know who you are and evaluate you. I'm going to let a couple things come up here first. Okay, got, okay. I'll just read it out. Reach out to them, send them film, camps, send them a transcript, email them, reach out and be active, email the coach, visit the coach while on campus, sign up for Recruit Spot, Reach out to coaches, send a recruiting video, work harder, get better, and send film. Like that guy. Show your dedication. All right. Some stuff in there is accurate. Some stuff is not so accurate. Sorry, I just got to pop up on my screen. Hopefully you don't see that. Get rid of that. A lot of these things that, so when you say reach out to coaches, if you're just going to email coaches, it's almost like you're sending in just a blank resume and seeing if that's going to lead to the promised land. No coach wakes up and goes, you know what, let me sign online and just go get these emails, and I'm going to find my recruiting class from these emails today. Okay, so there needs to be something very specific, and we'll talk about Recruit Spot, which I've never heard of. I'm not a big believer in any of the recruiting services. We'll get to that in a minute. So here we go. Number one is be seen playing live. Be seen playing live. That means at your high school season, which we know is difficult. Now it's impossible with no games and all that stuff, right? Your season is the college coach's season, so that makes it really difficult. Sometimes when the college season ends earlier, or the team didn't make the playoffs at the college level, they will have time to go out and watch the high school playoffs. We're generally going to see the most intense games and the best teams. So if you're on a really good program and you make it far in the playoffs, you'll be surprised that college coaches will show up there, but they're not going to be at random games during the beginning of the year for the reasons I talked about before of why recruiting is so hard. But summertime is, assuming the summer's on as normal, you certainly want to try to strategically be at events that the coaches on your list are going to be at. So to sign up for the best camp or event or tournament that doesn't make a fit for your list is basically a waste. Okay, but the first thing is to try to, if you're ever going to email a coach, they should know your schedule. Okay, now without doing these other things, they're not going to come watch you. But if they do pass these other tests that I'm going to get to, and then they do want to go see you, it should be very easy for them to find out what your summer slate is of schedules or, events, camps, things that you're going to be at. Camps, there's a million camps. I'm sure all of you on that side of the screen have gotten camp invites already, even if you're at a young age. You get on a list, you get a million camp invites across all sports. It could get expensive, it can get time consuming, it can be overwhelming. My advice to you is do some research, talk to kids or parents that have been to these events to know if they were run well, if the coaches they promised were actually there. Do your research, okay? Don't just go, oh, they have a shiny website and brochure, I'll sign up for that, and it doesn't fit. But number one advice is to try to match up to the schools that are on your list. So if you are, Bucknell is a school you want to be seen by, whatever the sport is, I'm sure those coaches know what their summer slate is of recruiting at this stage already, provided that it all happens. And you could email them, say, Coach, I'm not here to try to get recruited. I'm just curious what your summer schedule is. Do you guys run any camps so that I can be in the same place at the same time? Now, I don't want to waste too much time on this, but I think it's this crucial. The single best thing you could probably do is sign up for the camp at that school for that sport. And it's a bunch of reasons, and I want to take the time to explain that. So if you want to be a swimmer, tennis, field hockey, soccer, I'm just going to stick with Bucknell. They're more than likely going to have their own camp, okay? And the reason we have camps in the first place, and I know on that side of the screen you're going, yeah, it's a moneymaker. When we run our camps on our college campuses, you'll notice, hopefully you have already, they're extremely cheap. They're much cheaper than a random camp run by an independent business. We're not allowed to do tryouts. You can't just say, hey, just jump in the pool one day, come out, work out with the team, or let me work out. It's not allowed. This is why camps are a thing. But when you go to that college's camp, number one, we know that you like us. The problem when we go to an event is we've been rejected many times. We find a kid we like, we call the kid up on the phone, and they have no interest in coming to our school. We know when you sign up for our camp, you like the school. Step number one has already been bypassed. Number two, you get to meet a lot of the players in the team. A lot of these camps have their senior players helping at the camp. You get to talk to the girls in the team or the guys in the team and find out, are they happy with their choice? They'll shoot you straight. Trust me, over the years, I've heard people go to these camps and talk to players, say, we hate the coach, we hate the play. I don't know why he hired me to work this camp for him, because you get disgruntled people. Most of the kids are happy, but it's an inside look at the program. You get to see the facilities. You get the entire coaching staff there. Here's another problem with recruiting. When there's a soccer event going on in the summer, Quinnipiac's got 3 coaches recruiting one is one place, one is another place, one is a third place. They never, meet. They'll maybe text back and forth or take some video. But now you have all three coaches at this event, and they could say, hey, 17 in the white, that's a player we want. It moves forward really, really, really quickly. So, but what does it take? It takes you to be narrowed down with your list to be able to have, to go to those types of camps. But I highly advise you to start investigating those and see if it fits with your summer plans or whenever they may run those. There may be different times of the year, okay? Number two is you need to have some video. Now, not every sport is conducive to video. However, you'd be surprised the amount of golf and tennis and swim coaches that have told me they want to see video because they just want to look at technique, and they know if this girl swims this at this time with that stroke or that, way she did that, I could cut time off of that. So I highly advise you to get some film in some way. You don't need Steven Spielberg to shoot and direct. You need any video. It shouldn't ruin your parental experience. Let's just say that. You shouldn't be there with an iPhone, or it should be hire some kid to film it, or maybe the school does it, or parents can band together to get some stuff filmed and they give you access to the video later. And listen, one of the things I think I'm pretty good at, as I pat myself on the back, is I do surveys for these talks and my books. I've survey monkeyed this format I use. Thousands of coaches to know at different levels in different sports how they recruit. And on this video piece, I've gotten back coaches that never watch any video ever. And I got other coaches at other schools in certain sports that recruit almost all on video. Football players, I'm sure you all probably have a Huddle account where all your video is going, and that's a crucial way to get recruited in football. But football is very different in a number of reasons, and the biggest reasons is there's no travel football. You're not playing your high school football team and then playing a travel team in the winter or in the summer. You might be at camps or a variety of different things, but you're not playing a second season like almost every other sport is, and therefore video is crucial with the limited number of games. But getting any video in any capacity is enough for, again, no one's going to, and that's why you see here, it says no one way is magic. You don't just get a video, upload it somewhere and go, I'm just going to go sleep for 3 days now and I'm going to get all these offers. The video might be something that goes, all right, this kid looks pretty good. Let me go see them live now. Or maybe a coach only watches a video when they get this. They get a reference. So I can't tell you the amount of videos that I get sent that I'm not going to watch, plus the fact that a lot of kids don't look very good on video. But now all of a sudden, a coach from a high school calls and says, hey, listen, we got a kid here, one of the better players I've ever coached, great kid, great student, sent you a video, please take a look at it. We're going to do that. Getting a reference for you is crucial. That's how the pile of resumes, the 10 people get picked out, because someone calls and separates them from a group. So whether that is your high school coach, whether that is an alum of a school, whether it's a scout, your lesson coach, your travel coach, just something to rise you up from the noise. That's what recruiting is from our side. It's going, oh my God, I'm being overwhelmed with information. How do I narrow it down to know who's worth it? And I'll tell you this, in my 25 plus years of coaching and recruiting, I've never let one reference go unchecked. When someone reaches out to me, I will go to that next level. I'm not going to say I'm going to recruit that person, but I'm going to go make the effort to do that. And I want to interject right here. I don't believe it's your athletic director or your guidance counselors or your coach's jobs to get you recruited. It's not in their job description. They have too many students, too many things going on in their own personal lives. I think you should have 2 jobs you get from your high school coach, my opinion. Number 1, a sit down talk about where they think is the right level for you and what you need to work on, and just a kind of that general recruiting talk. And then number 2 is you give them 3 or 4 schools to call or contact on your behalf. They should do that. I've never known a coach to not do that unless you expect them to call 20 schools or 30 schools, or worse, you ask them to call a school where you have no business playing at. You're the 3rd string, lineman, and you want to play him, your coach, to call Nick Saban, right? So he's not going to do that. Now I see a question, couple things popping up. One is, what grade can you start talking to coaches? I'll get to that in a minute, because it's actually, I'll get to it at the end of this slide right here. So it's generally a combination of having some video. And again, over my years of doing this, the more editing the video has, the worse the player. When it fades in with smoke and Metallica and, banners, it's not as good as if the kid just shot it off an iPhone and the kid could play. The more graphics and design you have, it seems like you're trying to sell somebody who's not good enough. And it could be highlights, it could be anything, could be a half a game, quarter of a game, a practice, anything. Just get something that someone could click on, and it's just a way to give a little more information. Okay. A few more things here, and I'll cover that timing. Recruiting services. All right. I know a million of them. I've been doing this a long time. I've had a million of them call me to, as they started their business, what do I think? And the problem is a bunch of things. First of all, a lot of them are expensive, and the bigger problem is no one recruits from them. No one signs up for, no college coach comes into a computer and goes, I'm going to go to Be Recruited or NCSA and find my players. Never happens. And in fact, everyone that I've polled gets those things and basically just clicks them off, or takes the name, puts it on a list of, something that they're going to send to admissions. We want to hear from you directly. We don't want to hear from a recruiting service. Okay. So there's so many of them, and they just don't, the problem is that they don't match the right kids to the right schools. And therefore, why do I open up something from, NCSA when the kid comes from New Mexico and we've never had a New Mexico player? Or I coach baseball, the kid throws 70, our average guy throws 86. Or they send me something with a kid that has a 2.1 and we need a 2.9 to get. So we just start deleting. The only recruiting services that I know that have any merit, and if this is out of your control, is football and basketball, have services that colleges subscribe to that basically provide them the 300 best players in the United States. So if you're Duke and that thing costs you $10,000, so you don't have to do the legwork, and you know the best 300 basketball players in the country, from this list, you'll pay for it. You have the budget, you don't care. But no one else is waking up and going, I'm going to get on this site to look for players. Now, if you find this one site is just a good place to house your information, I don't see any problem with it. So that Recruit Spot, I don't know them from anything. If it's free or if it's very cheap, no real problem. But for you to go, all right, I got Recruit Spot, whatever, and it's just going to start pouring in now, it's just not going to happen. Okay, so I don't mean to, if on the call owns Recruit Spot, I feel bad if I've just shot you down, but we could talk. When is the right time to, so no to NCSA. NCSA is the devil. NCSA is the Wolf of Wall Street. NCSA has a building with a bunch of people that make personal phone calls to guilt you into signing up and then do nothing. So I hate to say that, but I know that for a fact. So I would say no to NCSA. They're just preying on the only person I'd ever hire for a recruiting service is if someone lives in Greenwich or your uncle just retired from college coaching and he wants to help you. Oh my God, tremendous, or the lacrosse coach from someplace retired and he's now helping kids that he works with locally. And that's great. That's someone that's in the field that has contacts. NCSA is a building of people that do sales calls and then you never hear from them again. Okay. I'll get to that question from the guy with the initials JG in a minute. So when is the right time to start recruiting / when can you talk to college coaches? For your average kid, it is somewhere in the junior year. Okay, so junior year is the typical time when the rules allow you to communicate. You're physically mature. Certainly the summer after junior year, before senior year is the biggest time across all sports. But many sports and many players, it happens earlier. And there are rules that it's not until July 1st, after your sophomore year, that this process can officially start. But I'm sure somewhere along the way, somebody that's younger, 9th or 10th grade, that's actually either talked to a college or committed to a college at an early age. You can Google it after. You can Google USC quarterback, and you'll find that they have commitment from a kid. And that's generally done through camps. And for every rule the NCAA makes, there's legal ways around these rules. And a lot of them is that the kid initiates the contact, or the happens at a camp. It happens at an in-person event. A sophomore comes up to the USC camp in the summertime and is a quarterback throwing the ball over the field, and the conversation happens at this event. So most of you will hear from coaches, and the time is in the junior year. For elite athletes, it could happen, earlier than that, but it's generally going to be at a physical in-person type place. Occasionally, as a college coach, we can call a high school coach or a travel coach and say, hey, can you have this person reach out and contact me? As opposed to us being able to contact them directly. There's a lot of rules about that. And again, I don't want to get too sidetracked, but the recruiting rules are set up, and there's so many of them. There's a book this thick that we get tested on. The rules are set up because if there was not, it would be the Wild West. A place like Duke that makes huge revenue would find the best players in the country and buy them a house or buy them a car or give them cash or get them jobs. So the rules are set up to try to make things even and fair in the recruiting process. And still, from time to time, you hear crazy things that go on with shoe companies and all these different agents and craziness at the high level. Again, football, basketball is basically a business at the college level, whereas the rest of them, everyone wants to win and it's competitive, but it's not to that level. Okay. All right. I'm going to go through here. So now the rest of these slides gets us to where the third and final part, and we still have a good amount to cover, is you're being recruited. So I'm going to just get to this slide right here and let you look at it while I talk about it here. You know you're being recruited when you get a personal phone call, a handwritten email, a text. They visit you at the high school. They visit you at your house. They bring you up to campus and meet with you. It's not a general form letter, a camp invite. It's something very personal. We saw when you played Darien. We saw when you played Staples. We saw you in this summer event or tournament. It's very specific. Okay. Once you're being recruited, you have a variety of things, and I'll just kind of lay it out now. Number one is this initial eligibility clearinghouse. Number two is knowing what you're looking for in programs, which is the next slide. Number three is admissions, and then four would be financial aid, scholarships, which we'll get to also. This thing right here, if you're going to get this, recording, but if you're taking some notes, I would write down 2.3.org, and your guidance department will help you with this as well. But what you are looking at now is the minimum requirements upon graduation to qualify to play your freshman year in the Division I level. Okay, so in Division I, when you graduate Greenwich High School, in your 16 core courses, which started in the 9th grade, you can have no lower than a 2-3 in those 16 core courses: English, math, social studies, and science. Each school designates their own core courses. A lot of times when you're registering for classes, a lot of schools, and I don't know if Greenwich does, will have an asterisk or something next to it showing you that it's an NCAA core course. When you graduate, it's not, so this is not about your overall transcript. It's about your core courses. So, that's a great question someone just put in there. So how would pass-fail affect this? I don't really know, but I'm going to give you what I think the answer is, which is it won't change it. So pass-fail for this term will not change your core GPA. So now you'll get credit for that course, but it won't influence it. So now when you go to graduate, you might have 13 core courses, and they're going to take what those 13 core course GPA turns out to be instead of the 16. But that's a really, really good question. Excellent question, which I wouldn't have thought of, but you're right. That's a smart one. So I'm assuming if you get an F, you're going to have to retake that course, and you got yourself a problem. If you pass, hopefully your other courses are in good shape for your GPA. 2-3 in those 16 core courses, most people are going to just fly right by it. Let's hope. If you have a 2-3, you need a 920 math and verbal, or there's a corresponding ACT score, I believe, of 25. If you go to that site, it has all the information. And this is a sliding scale. So the lower your GPA, the higher your board scores need to be. And the higher your GPA, the lower your board scores need to be. And it's just a huge sliding scale. And that site has it. So I don't even put it up on a slide because there's so many columns, it's really, really difficult to see. But if you say, all right, I'm projected to have a 285 core course GPA, you would say, all right, I need this SAT or this ACT. So you need to, just the point of this is something that you have to register for generally in your junior year. Okay, and you need to, your grades matter, and they matter starting in the 9th grade. For Division II athletes, which is also the scholarship level, Division I and II are scholarship levels, Division III is not. In Division II, you need 14 core courses only, not 16. You need a minimum of a 2.0 and an 820 on your SAT. There is no sliding scale. Now, For Division III, I want to just mention this. They changed this a couple years back. Previously, if you were you thought you were playing Division III, you didn't even bother with this stuff because it costs money. It's about $78 to register for this. So they were like, let's not even bother with the Division III kids to do this, because again, you don't need to pass this clearinghouse to play at the non-scholarship level. What was happening is kids were not registering for it, and then late in the process, they would be recruited by a Division I or II school. They had not registered for this, and it slowed everything to a complete halt, because when we recruit you, we get your clearinghouse ID, we get to look up and see all your grades, and it's what compliance needs, and it's what a lot of things cannot happen until we get all that information from our side. So what they've done now is when you go in there, it'll say Division I or II, click here, Division III, click here. And the Division III, you fill out all the information, you just don't pay. And then if you want to switch it over because of your interest or getting recruited, you just switch it to Division I or II, and you pay, but all the paperwork is already in the system and nothing gets held up. So this is now advisable to do for anyone that's really serious about playing in college, okay? All right. Again, I'm going to take questions if I went over that too quickly. This next piece I think is really, really important. Again, back to you, the customer. If you're going to buy a car, you're going to do your research, you're going to ask questions, you're going to test drive, and you're not just going to walk in blindly and ask the sales guy, you know, is this Maxima the best car? They're going to, of course, tell you it's great and it's got no problems and it's better than all the competitors. They might be right. They might also want to make a sale. All right. So when you're being recruited, you are obviously being sold by most of the time good coaches that have your best interest at heart, but you also have coaches that will white lie or lie by omission by not telling you certain things. So my book has what to look for and what to ask if it's not being told to you. Okay, just the same way if you were being offered a job, you might ask a variety of things before you just go yes the second they offer you the job. What does it pay? What's the benefits, chance of advancement, stock options, travel, dress code? Do I get a cell phone, expense account? A million things you'd ask before you just blindly go take a job. In the world of college recruiting, it amounts to 4 distinct categories where you should either be explained or you need to get the answers to. So I'm going to go through them here fairly briefly, but to make the point. Number 1 is, how does the academic piece mesh with athletics, right? You're hopefully purposely going to college to get an education, get a degree. So how does this school manage your swimming commitment and your travel at the D1 level and all that's involved with still being a bio major? Do they have tutors? Do they have study hall? Do they have, can you be any major? There are certain programs that limit your choice of majors because it affects your practice or game time. Do you get to pick classes around before regular students, so you get the preferential schedule over a student that doesn't have an athletic commitment? If you're on academic money, what parameters do you have to keep that money? If you're on athletic money, what are your academic parameters you have to keep? How many people graduate in 4 years? What's the graduate school? What's the job prospects? What's the grad school rate? So what is in place academically to help you succeed, and how does that mesh with athletics? That's 1. Number 2 is, what are the coaches really like? Head coach, assistant coach, what are they really like? Will they mesh with you personality-wise? Will they mesh with your style of play, your event? Do you guys hit it off in that regard? Is really important, because again, in recruiting, coaches put on their best self, right? If someone wants to hire you for a job, they're going to put on their best self. They're not going to scream at you for being 3 minutes late to the meeting. But when they hire you and you're 3 minutes late, then you might get screamed at, or they make, maybe there's a reason that job came open in the first place, because the last 2 people quit because they hated the guy. Okay, so do your research. Recruiting, where did they see you? What do they like about you? What's your likely chance of play as a freshman? What is it going to take? What competition is currently on the team, or who are they also recruiting in your class? So what's your opportunity to get in the pool or on the court or on the field immediately, early? And it doesn't mean you choose the school that says, yeah, we'll get you on the field as a freshman, because maybe you have a higher level program that says, you're probably not going to play much as a freshman, but it's a bigger level, and that's the kind of challenge that you want. Are they going to switch your position or event? I mean, that's something that happens a lot of times in a lot of sports, and you don't know that till you get there. And maybe because you didn't ask, or they're just going to do whatever they think's in the best interest of the team. And then a variety of things that I know because I've worked at 5 colleges that you should be looking at. How do they travel? What equipment do they get? Do they wash their own uniforms? Do they have to fundraise? What is their facilities like? Do they have a strength and conditioning coach, concussion policy, drug testing, whose insurance pays for injury? There's so many different things that, again, my book's got questions upon questions. I'm not trying to pass you off to that, but it also shows your interest. Somebody wants to hire you or interviews you for a job. They say, have any questions? You usually ask a couple of questions of things you actually want to know, or you just like to converse. It's the same thing here. You know, I love when I have a young man and his family in there, and I say, hey, you know, have any questions? And I had a kid before the virus hit. This kid had a leather-bound notebook where he had questions. And he's like, I'm using this with all my different schools. And he came out of there with great questions. And I love the kid. I love that. This kid did all the asking. Mom and dad didn't do all the questioning. He had his own little notebook. I got a notebook. You mean not a phone? He actually took a pen and wrote on paper, and ink came out, and it meant like stuff to him. You know, I'm just joking, but I do that with my college guys all the time when I explain what reading a book is. You know, it's got words, pages, you finish, you flip it over. It's called a book. So I don't know if my humor is coming across here on the computer, but you got to investigate athletic departments, because you may pick one school over another. This one school has a great strength and conditioning coach and develops you physically, and this other school, thank you for the smiley face, and this other school doesn't have a strength and conditioning coach. They have captains doing the lifting, and yeah, you'll get a bit bigger and stronger, but you're not on a structured program from a person that went to college and has dedicated their life to making you bigger, stronger, faster, and more powerful. Okay, so do your homework. Again, when you're being recruited, you started with 20 schools, you got no interest in 6 kind of like you, you're down to 4. You should be asking questions. One of those 4 is where you're going to college and spending the 4 years of your life in bumper sticker and alums and bringing your kids to. You should ask the questions. Okay, you're paying the tuition and you're the customer, so ask the questions. Okay, here we are to admissions. So, since I'm going to take a sip of I should get a sponsorship from Polar Seltzer. Love them. I coached at Holy Cross prior to Sacred Heart. This was right next to the place that I used to go there all the time. Admissions, I'm gonna tweak this, and I have since the admissions kind of scandal, because I don't want it to be misconstrued in any way. So you can read all the data that's on the screen, but I'm gonna make it so simple. This is how every college coach in the entire planet recruits as it pertains to admissions. We find a player we like. The very next thing we do is ask for a transcript. Okay, so here's my phone right here. Oh, pardon me. I just looked on my phone because I was showing you something. I realized you can see my screen in the chat thing, so I want to turn that off. So here is just a kid, just from today. I mean, it's not going to be all that thrilling. Where's my thing? Can you see it there? Yeah, it's not all that exciting. This is a kid's transcript. This is the next step. Find a kid you like, get a transcript. You take that transcript. I do a cover sheet, a pre-read sheet, which is now all online for our admissions people, everyone working remotely. And it has the name, the address. Are they a scholarship candidate? When do they plan to enroll? Potential major, honors eligible, community service, all these different things. You take this cover sheet and a transcript and you send it in to admissions. And then it comes back with this ABC thing, ABC, right? So it's ABC things when they return it back to you. A is what we're all dreaming for. A is this person is admissible, okay? And then number 2 is how much academic money they qualify, if any. So it's yes, they're not admitted, they're admissible. So unless the world goes crazy with their grades, this person will be admitted when they apply, but it doesn't mean they're admitted yet. It means they're admissible, and then here's $12,000 based on their transcript. Okay, that person's fantastic. We keep recruiting that person and move forward. Then you get C. C is they're not admissible. They're not officially denied because they haven't applied, but according to this read in these grades, forget it. So I can beg and plead sometimes, give another semester, come meet them, let them take the SAT again. And I think 1 out of 50 times they're going to say, all right. Most of the time it's just forget it. But while it's disappointing for me and that player, it's clear cut, which is kind of what you're looking for. The B level is our least favorite because it means here's what we still need to see from this person before we say they're admissible and make even an academic offer. We want to see another grade of marking period. So they want more grades, okay? They want the interview. They want new board scores. Sometimes they want to see who else from that high school applies. They want to see them take more challenging classes. So I'm actually telling kids, hey, we want to see some honors or AP courses in there because at this stage they don't think you're leaning towards not being admissible here. And this is something that used to happen all the time at Holy Cross, which I just mentioned. Scarily, amazingly, that kids would actually go, and I'm sorry that I'm getting, because things are popping up on screen. I want to make sure in a second that my tech is still all working. Kids would go, drop down. They couldn't handle an honors or AP class, and they would drop down, and they would resubmit their transcript, and Holy Cross would now deny them. That's a really high-level academic institution, and Sacred Heart is not as hard as that, but that same thing happens. So the B level of kid, they need more information from, and that's no fun place in recruiting, because why do you want to spend 6 months recruiting a player to find out they're denied, and then the kid that was, in with the good grades, now you go back to them and they've taken something else. Just the same way that many kids are probably should, they blow off a Division III school. I'm not interested in Haverford or F&M or Dickinson. I want to play here. Those schools never contact them. Now they go back to those schools because they realize that's where they should have been in the first place, and those schools have found other kids. It's kind of what happens. All right, I'm just going to open this up briefly to see. Okay, I got a bunch of Q&As. Let me just scroll just to make sure there's no tech problems. Camps are best to attend at any time, even in 10th grade. I wouldn't say 10th grade is too early to go attend a camp. All right, back here in the chat, open that up. Okay. Aha. Okay, so I'm gonna keep that closed, and then I'm going to get to all those questions there towards the end. All right, these next two slides, and I said I was going to take a drink. I never did. These next two slides you might find interesting. Obviously, this says women's NCAA sports that are scholarship level for Division I and II. The next one will be the number for the men. And this takes some explanation. This is, believe it or not, public information. You just probably never seen it. This is the maximum amount of scholarships allowed per sport in Division I or II. So to break it down further, I always pick Division II women's basketball because it has 10 scholarships. 10's an easy number to do some math. So in Division II, if Stonehill's women's basketball team, let's take Stonehill, costs $50,000 to attend. 10 times 50 is $500,000. That is their women's basketball scholarship budget. That is not each class, that is the whole program at once, which entails grad students, fifth-year seniors, juniors, sophomores, and freshmen. And typically what coaches do is we know who's leaving the program through graduation or transfer or whatever other reason. We know how much money that group of people was getting, and we use that as the offers to the new incoming freshmen or transfers, okay? And generally, two sports, football and basketball, are full scholarship sports, meaning you get zero or everything, tuition, room, board, and books. Every other sport that's on both slides can be partial. So you could get $12,000 for academics and get $7,000 for, let's take one here, for golf. And now you have a $19,000 grant package that does not have to be paid back on top of what other loans or financial aid that you would qualify for. Okay, loans obviously have to be paid back. The grants do not. And so let's just get to the number here for the men. So here's the men's figures. Now, a couple of things to comment on here while you're just taking a look at that. This is the maximum amount allowed. It does not mean that every college program in the country that offers these sports is what we call fully funded. And you don't know from the outside looking in. I don't know. I have no idea how much scholarships UMass has in various sports. I have no idea how much, Quinnipiac has, Central Connecticut, Hartford, Fairfield, Quinnipiac. I don't know. I mean, I don't even know what every sport at Sacred Heart has. I mean, I know ours and a few others, but I don't know what everyone has. Most of the big-time athletic departments, your North Carolinas, your Penn States, Stanfords, Texas, Floridas, the big boys of college athletics, if they have the sport, they're fully funded. But that does not mean that your average school has that much scholarship money to give out. So I always get the question, how does someone know when they're a scholarship level athlete or player? And the answer is when you get offered. How do you know IBM wants to hire you at X amount? When they call and offer you the job and tell you what it pays. So generally, you'll know when you're a scholarship athlete because you're going to be contacted on a regular basis. Coach is going to show interest. They're going to ask for a transcript. They're going to move it forward. And then they may tell you, and this was one of the questions someone put in the chat earlier, there's really 3 types of ways to make a college team. Number 1 is get a scholarship offer. Can happen at Division 1 or 2. Okay, you have a roster spot through your commitment. You get a national letter of intent. You can get a walk-on, a recruited walk-on. A recruited walk-on means you do not get scholarship money, either because they didn't think you were good enough, or you were more likely they were out of scholarship money, which is how a lot of kids make a lot of, go back to, it's actually right here. Football has 85 scholarships. It's a large number, but there's 120 kids on the sidelines at a Tennessee football game. So the rest of the kids there don't have a dime. They were recruited. They were sought after by other programs, but they went to Tennessee and on their own dime. That kid can often earn a scholarship while there, and that's what you hear. This walk-on earned a scholarship. That's a recruited walk-on. That is not a dude that showed up with cleats and a helmet in September and made a football team or any team. The days of just trying out and looking for a sign, most colleges don't even offer tryouts. Recruiting is so intense these days that they're going to go, I'm going to just post a sign and find good players. So your chances of trying out and walking onto a team is really like hitting Powerball. It's almost impossible. So you're probably in that situation better off playing club ball, which is growing at many schools, or playing intramurals and having a blast doing that. Lord knows it's a whole lot of fun. Okay. All right, I should have 1 slide left, and I appreciate you hanging in with me, especially since you have no active participation on your side and all that stuff. Just going to read this here, and then I'm going to go to that chat, and I'm going to answer every question, at least until, I'm in no rush, certainly for a while. I kind of said this earlier, so I don't need to go crazy with it again, is making a final decision. And this is my least favorite slide because I have people in here who I've just tried to explain everything I know about the recruiting process, yet they've never been to a college, and I'm telling them how to make a decision on a college that they've never been to. But all things being equal, and kids really struggle when they have to make a choice down at the end. It's not easy for a lot of kids. I would go to the best academic school or better, best one for my major. Or number 2, I would go to the school that's either the cheapest or gives me the best financial aid package. Or 3, I would go where the coach and I seem to really connect and he has the most or she has the most interest. And again, remember back to the beginning, I don't say athletics should lead the way, but if you're down to 3 schools that seem to be equally academics, social, all that, and you happen to hit it off with the coach better and the coach really likes you, I think that could be a decision factor. However, truly the best way is to visit and eat in the cafeteria, see the dorm, sit in on class, watch a practice, watch a game. Not at an open house, but sort of like a day in the life of a student athlete at that school to really kind of see what it's like. Again, you're going to spend 4 years there and a lot of money. You want to really do that. You want to kick the tires because you don't want to transfer. You don't want to transfer. I'll tell you now, I probably am wrong about this, but I think transferring is harder than divorce or changing a job because changing a job, you could just stay where you are and get a job. Divorce, can't be fun. I certainly don't want to go through it. That's why I better behave for my wife. But now you're losing credits. That's one little piece. You got to redo the whole thing over again. But now you're leaving friends. A certain part of the school you must have liked, and then you transfer and you go to a new school. It's not easy to fit in. It's not easy to get adjusted to a new school, especially when everyone's been there a year and you have it athletically, academically, in every capacity. You really want to ultimately do it right in the first time, and that happens when you really use your gut decision. Ultimately, the way to decide is to go there and just really get in the life of that school and then make that gut decision. The final part I'll say before I get to the questions is my website, where there's further ways you can reach me, and there's my email. So if I don't solve this for you now, I'll certainly get it to you another way. So I'm going to stop my screen share, and I'm going to go. There's two ways it looks like people are at. There's a chat and there's a Q&A. So I'm going to start on the chat side, and then I'm going to go to the other side here. Okay. And I appreciate you all sticking with me on a nice day when it's going to rain tomorrow too. If the school is really interested in you, is there a possibility they will give you more acceptance for your grades? Most people hear stories of Division I schools accepting kids with lower GPAs. Is this the same for Division III? Okay, so here's a way to answer that. Some schools, they're judged on the overall pool of kids they bring in for that sport. So even take the Ivies. The Ivies have the academic index, which you could, if you're interested in the Ivies, you better be able to speak the academic index language. And that says, and this is similar for other schools, but kind of in a different way, and I think this will be a good way to explain it. Let's take Cornell. So if you want to, for the soccer coach at Cornell, the 7 kids that they're going to bring in for the class of 2020, the overall grades of those 7 kids must be within a 10% range of the entire freshman people that came to Cornell, sport or no sport, in 2019. And what that is that's the way that they can make sure that the Ivies are recruiting athletes in the same way that the overall school is recruiting. However, what that does mean is that the Ivies and other schools can take a kid below the school standards, provided that they get a kid on the higher end, so that when you add everybody up together, the formula all works out. And if you, again, want to go to that academic index, I think that'll really give you a good idea, especially for those of you with the Ivies. The bottom line is the better your grades, the more choices you'll have and the more money you'll get. So and you'll learn some stuff too, which will be nice. All right, let me keep scrolling. Covered that one, covered that one. Okay, Judy Nadell said this is why Greenwich High School students can download an unofficial transcript right from our database. So you can get an unofficial transcript right from the database to be able to send to college coach. If it needs to be official, then your guidance department will hand it. Thank you. How many points can there be between the average to school versus your grade? I'm not sure I know that one. I'll get back to it. Men's crew has a little money, not looking for a scholarship, looking to see getting recruited can help get into some of the tougher schools, such as even if grades are very good since these schools. Yeah, I mean, I think there's no question that, and again, back to the slide and why I didn't get into it, but I should now. The idea is that if you bring something more to the table than your transcript, you volunteer, you started your own business, you have unusual family circumstances, you play a sport. If you bring something that's going to upgrade campus life, you become more than just your transcript. So the fact of the matter is that playing a sport and being on the crew team adds to campus life, and that's going to help you get into that. So 2 kids, identical transcripts. One has crew, one does not. One's going to be crew in college, the other one does not. This one, the one that does the crew, has a much better chance of getting accepted. Absolutely, hands down. Now, if that other kid doesn't do crew, but started a volunteer program delivering food to old people during the coronavirus, and admissions may view that differently than the way they view crew. Is there a difference between recruiting from a private school versus public school? Is it recommended to attend a private school over a public school if you want to get recruited? Really makes no difference. You got to remember there's 2 factors to this. There's admissions, and then there's recruiting. You know, and I'm not versed enough on admissions to know would admissions, and you might punch me in the face through the screen. If I'm the admissions person at Boston College, do I care about a person going to Greenwich High School as opposed to Brunswick? Do I want the person from Brunswick more as an admissions counselor? No idea. Maybe. As a coach, I could care less. I don't care if you're homeschooled. be a good person, be a good athlete, be a good student, and we're going to recruit you. So from a coach's perspective, it doesn't matter. I have kids from all different places, and most coaches have kids from all different places. And I don't think there's a magic one way. And I know we could get into this, which probably not unless I get a specific question. I mean, more and more kids are reclassifying, which I'm not personally a big fan of, but I can't speak for everybody on that. So I'm going to keep scrolling down here. Pros and cons of Ivy League. Interesting. I had 2 kids on my team this year from the Ivy League. One's a grad transfer that went to Brown. Another one's an undergrad transfer that went to Dartmouth. The cons of the Ivy League would be only 2 I can think of. One is there is no scholarship money. The Ivies do not give athletic scholarship money. Secondly, there's 1,000,001 rules about how much time you can give to your sport. So if you're really crazy into your sport, if you possibly want to play after college in your sport, I think you'd be a little restricted to go and participate in the Ivies. Other than that, I can't see anything being better than going and getting an education at the Ivies and playing a sport. It seems like a ridiculously awesome thing, with the exception of maybe it is stressful to keep all your academics up. But I mean, I've dealt with kids that are in the NESCAC too. It's no joke there either. Not so many good colleges, but pros and cons, I think the pros got to outweigh the cons on that regard. Let's see. I want to make sure I do this right so I don't coach guys. How do coaches look at single sport compared to multi-sport athletes? I've been doing some Zoom talks with some prominent people, coaches and otherwise, and I think the world likes multi-sport athletes, especially coaches still. I wouldn't play a second sport just because it looks better, but I wouldn't drop a second sport you love to focus on one thinking it's going to impress people or that's the only way to get recruited. I think every college coach will tell you, you learn more by being on a team and competing and winning than doing extra practice time or something on another team. Now, you could still take your primary sport and pick up a second season of it, but personally, and I think I speak from 95% of college coaches, that love multi-sport athletes. Are the college underclassmen who lost their season this year allowed another season like the seniors? Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I would have forgotten to talk about that. So much flux in college athletics. Here's the gist of what's happening as far as I know. Spring athletes who had their sport taken away in college all have that extra year of eligibility back, including this current seniors, but even the kid who was a freshman on a college team on lacrosse this spring, in essence, didn't play a season. He still has 4 years left, or she has 4 years left. Here's where the confusion and the problem now stems. One is all sports have roster limits. So the NCAA has already said the seniors returning won't count towards that roster limit. So in other words, seniors can come back and don't affect the NCAA rule on roster limits. However, we don't yet know until May whether these underclass kids will have that same thing. So in other words, if a sophomore wants to come back in 3 years, will he or she count towards your roster limit that's set by the NCAA, or will they waive that? That's question number one. Probably the biggest issue, or the bigger issue, I should say, is finances. You're talking about people that have to now pay for an extra year of school, and who's paying for it? Most of these kids either are not getting a big scholarship or any scholarship, or got 4 years of a scholarship, and that money's already been spent on incoming recruits, and there's no money for these seniors. So I have 8 seniors and / grad students on my team. I have one of the 8 returning who had a year left anyway because of an injury. So I think you're finding that most athletes that are seniors are not returning and just moving on to the workforce or grad school and not playing. But it stinks. I mean, it stinks. I mean, the virus is terrible for anyone that's died from it, that's gotten it, that has been affected by family and friends. But you could throw senior, high school, and college students and players into that category of who's been hurt by it. Is it realistic to play 2 sports, for example, hockey and baseball, at any of the divisions? Ooh, love that question. Very difficult. I'm going to say close to impossible in Division I for a couple of reasons. Mostly they would overlap. In Division III, you'd probably have a shot because, again, the limited practice times, the limited number of games, they probably don't overlap. And as long as you got the coaches to agree on it and be fine with that, that's good. I think what probably happens to most kids when they get in that scenario is they go, holy cow, there's a lot of good baseball players and a lot of good hockey players, and I'm doing half of each, and I'm not going to be really good in either, and it's just not going to work. It could. I mean, it certainly could. That kid who I mentioned who transferred in from Brown, played 4 years wrestled at Brown for 4 years, came to Sacred Heart as a grad student, played football, and then played baseball. But hockey is tough because it's winter. That's going into spring. You guys are asking good questions. Let me keep scrolling. I got to go way down to the bottom. All right, so I'm going to go. I think I covered that. I'm going to go into this one right here. All right. Oh, what do the numbers in the columns mean again? So I'm assuming you're talking about the scholarship. That is the maximum amount of scholarship money that a program can give out. So if it says 11.7, you take that number and times it by the cost of the school, and that's how much scholarship money is in their budget. So if they have golf, it's 5, and the school is $60,000. 60 times 5 is $300,000. That's their golf scholarship budget for that particular school. What factor would you take into account if deciding between club, and I'm wondering if you're saying club in Division I. I don't know if this person who wrote that is still on with me. Maybe you can clarify that. What factors would you take into account if deciding between club and Division I? And I see AR sent in something there. The best coach to get a reference from is probably your high school coach, because they're not being paid like a club or travel coach, and we know that. But both coaches would be great. The best one would be the high school coach. I'm going to answer this question unless I get more information, which is, what factor would you take into account if deciding between club and Division I? I'll just go with that. While club sports is intercollegiate, meaning that they play other teams, it's a completely different experience in dedication. So a college team is going to practice 6 days a week, maybe lift on it that 7th day. It's a 7-day-a-week thing, probably year-round. Club is going to practice 3-4 times a week, probably not practice out of season, play a few games. People are doing it for friendship, for camaraderie. They like the sport, but it's just a much dialed down intensity level. So, and in case you were going to ask this, no one ever plays club and moves up to the college program. It basically never happens. More or less, someone starts in the college team, realizes it's not for them, and for the NCAA, and then drops down to the club team. Can you play one sport in high school and club? Can you play one sport in high school? Can you play one sport in high school and play club at the same time? Or do you mean, is it okay to just play one sport in club? Not sure. I'll get back to that. Is it more likely that an athlete can play 2 sports at college level in 2 different seasons, fall and spring? Much more likely, but again, probably still at the Division III level, because coaches, those teams are probably not having that much out of season practice. Whereas Division I, they're out of primary competition seasons, really intense. So much more likely spring and fall, and much more likely as the levels go down. Will college coaches call high school or other teams for info about a kid? Most college coaches call a variety of people. Especially if it's a scholarship kid, they're making a big commitment. They're going to do their research in a lot of ways. I've spoken to guidance counselors, teachers, principals, a lot of different things. And then frankly, sometimes when I'm that serious, I show up to watch the kid in person, and instead of wearing all my Sacred Heart gear, I show up like this, like someone's regular dad, go sit in the corner there and just watch how the kid stretches, warms up, treats people, reacts to the officials, deals with adversity, fails, all those types of things. So we're watching a lot, especially the kids that we really, really like. All right, I think I've covered that. Let me see if I can adjust this to make it easier to look at. So I know some of you are clicking off. Just as some follow-up, this recording I will send to the school and then let them send that out. In fact, it's possible, I don't know the system well enough to know if this will automatically send this to you to, oh, someone's trying, oh, there's a call-in listener. I thought they were calling in like sports radio. So you should be able to get a copy of this. If that doesn't come through in the next few days, feel free to contact me and I'll send you the PowerPoint. And this will record on my own. I could send you to that as well. Thank you for the comments. Thank you all for hope it was good. I know it's sometimes hard to just do it. Is there more chance for swimmers to get recruited at high school competitions or club? I think the answer is probably through club. And I'm only saying probably because I do know that Greenwich Swimming is a power. I think I'm accurate about that, correct? So Greenwich Swimming probably has a pretty good reputation, the number of kids having your own pool, etc. But for the most part, it's club. It's Zeus and Fly Fins and Westport, Wilton Swim and Water Rats or whatever else those names of those places are. And you probably have one in Greenwich that I missed and you're going to slap me. But I've been to the Greenwich Y for swim meets and that type of thing. Can grad students with extra eligibility get scholarship money? Yes, they can. They can get scholarship money, but the issue makes it really, really difficult at this point. Like I had a phone call prior to this, or Zoom calls with 2 transfers, grad student transfers that basically need money to come in. The problem is I don't know where my money stands right now at the moment because of really finally who's returning. Are we getting any extra money back from the NCAA? For the most part, that this fall, our money's been spent. So, it ordinarily can, but for this fall, it's a case-by-case basis with the schools. So what about women's rugby and field hockey? Do you have any idea about how competitive they are? By competitive, do you mean recruiting-wise on the field? Recruiting-wise, very competitive. I mean, there's very little that isn't competitive. And then you go, well, all right, crew, there's not a million kids that are doing crew. Okay, there's not a lot of college programs that have crew. There's not a lot of women's rugby. We have women's rugby at Sacred Heart, and I know they recruit really heavily. So I don't think any sport is any harder, easier recruiting-wise. I mean, we're in a lacrosse hotbed, Connecticut, Long Island, etc. There's not a boatload of college lacrosse programs, but they're not playing lacrosse at a lot of parts of our country. So, that's a tough question to answer in that way. I think they're really, really competitive. I don't know if there's a sport that's sometimes the NCAA will, and it's been a while now, where they announced as an emerging sport years ago. First was women's crew, and then the next was women's beach volleyball. And when sports are new, there's a lot more opportunity because less people participate in those sports, and they're done for a variety of reasons, including Title IX. At that point, you might have more of an opportunity, but I think field hockey is competitive, and women's rugby is really competitive. How competitive is wrestling recruiting at Sacred Heart, and how does it compare to other schools that have wrestling teams? Really good question. John Clark is our wrestling coach at Sacred Heart, and I'll tell you right now, there's not a day I walk around just for whatever that he's not walking a recruit around. So he's constantly recruiting, and he's trying to build a really good program. That being said, there are historic college programs, Iowa, Penn State, the ones if you're in wrestling, that just have such a tradition that going to get the top recruits way ahead of what a Sacred Heart is. And that's typical for us in all our sports. And that's part of our job, is to find that right kid that's going to make a fit with our program. But if you're really interested in Sacred Heart, feel free to email me. Let me know you're on this webinar. I'll connect you and Coach Clark, and he'll take it from there. Okay. Gus, thank you very much. And same with you. Stay safe, stay healthy. I'm glad this worked. It's always so weird on this side. If you've ever led these, you probably have in your position. You don't get any feedback, so I appreciate you writing that. So, all right, everyone. Thank you so much. I think I'll sign off now. Any other questions, feel free to email me at that address, and I'll respond, whether it's tonight or if it rains tomorrow. I'll be sitting in the house all day. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe. God bless. Take care. Thank you very much, everyone.